YouTube. I think we're the only meditation gathering that I know of that is streamed at this point, because it's not exactly the most exciting thing to do is sit there and watch somebody meditate, you know. So if you're wondering about the cameras and what I'm doing here with the computer and everything, it has to do with the streaming. And
is it
so,
live streaming?
Pardon me?
Is it live streaming?
Live streaming, yeah. So if you, for some reason you can't make it, you can still tune in. Or if you're out of town or something, traveling. And it's something that we've been trying for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And then we use the stream to, we've been cutting it down a little bit and making then we unload it and then we reload it back into YouTube and kind of clean it up a little bit and you know, make it a little bit more watchable for a lot of people. Let me see. Looks like we have about 6 or 7 new people here. So that's interesting. I thank everybody for coming. If we have a few more people coming in, so as they do come in, try to make a little bit of room for them, if you would. We have 1 chair over there, and if somebody needs a chair, of course, there's a bunch of folding chairs there. So. Yeah, there's a chair. Of course, in meditation, we can, you know, the ideal situation is that we practice at home, you know, when we're usually alone by ourselves. And I think I tell people almost every day, you know, to be consistent with their practice, which means meditating at home. Whether we meditate with our partner or meditate with our dog or cat or by ourselves, you know, the whole idea is to do it consistently. But I always encourage people to be a part of, you know, a group like this, where we can kind of share the energy. You know, it kind of reminds us that we're not the only ones out there meditating. You know, to do it with other people. And thankfully, there's lots of opportunities to meditate with other people these days. Paul has a group on Thursday nights, and Maureen has a group on Friday nights right here. Joe doesn't have a group yet, but we're working on him. But there's lots of opportunities to get out there and meditate with friends, and it's a good way to meet people, like-minded people too. The thing about meditation, I run into it a lot, and it kind of came up in conversation today about what meditation really is all about. And a lot of times people look at meditation as a kind of tied in with contemplation. And when we look at it from a technical standpoint, it's really completely different than contemplation, although contemplation can be a part of a meditation. But we have to set the intention, you know, that we are going to use it for contemplation. Because contemplation is a cognitive practice. And meditation, it's not that meditation is not cognitive. It's just that we are trying to bring ourselves into this stillness. Basically, the Buddha told us that we suffer, and a lot of times people wonder what he meant by that. He went on to say that we suffer because of our desires, basically, and that has to include our attachments. and possibly even more so, our attachments to these things that we like, that we feel will bring us happiness in life. And probably the biggest desire that we have is that we have the desire for things to be different. Anytime that we don't feel right, or we want something more, or we want things to be a little bit better, or a little bit stranger, or more exciting, or maybe less exciting. We want our food to be different sometimes. We want our car to be different sometimes. We want our family to be different, on and on and on. And so our desire for things to be different kind of sums it all up. And so if we can have a practice where we sit in this in stillness and notice when the mind has this tendency to want to go and entertain us, or want to do something different, even maybe different than meditating, or different than being here. If everybody understood meditation and how it benefits us, we would need a much bigger room, and maybe someday we will. But in the meantime, the meditation is a practice that allows us to become sensitive to our desires. And if our big desire is to have the desire for things to be different, it's a direct pointing to what this stillness is all about, to rest in this present moment. And if we are sitting in meditation and wish for things to be different in any way, it's a lesson for us. It's a reminder. It could be something within the body. We might not feel comfortable within the body. It could be something, kind of a mental agitation. Could be restlessness and worry. Could be fear or anger, or something related to the past or to the future. All these different things that come up for us. And they're supposed to come up. It's supposed to be that way. And that is the wonderful thing about meditation, is it allows us to see these things firsthand. We might be, the bell might ring, and then we close our eyes and go, oh, okay, this feels good. And several things can happen if we're not used to meditating. We can all of a sudden get drowsy with our eyes closed. The body's not used to accepting that idea that the eyes are closed and we're not supposed to fall asleep. All of a sudden we get drowsy and we start struggling, like, oh no, this isn't what meditation is supposed to be like. I'm too relaxed, I'm too laid back all of a sudden. Usually the consistency in meditation helps that, where the mind and the body recognize that the eyes are closed, and even though it's a lot like sleeping, it's not a time for sleep. So we can kind of build that energy and feel that energy within the body. And the other thing that can happen is the proverbial monkey mind, where we notice the activity of the mind going and going and going. And the sweet spot between these two is to have energy and to be able to set our thoughts aside from the point of view, from the intention that there's no purpose for the past or the future at this moment. We can pick that up later. And the reason I'm picking on the past and the future is because that's where our thoughts go. Usually in the area of fear or anger, or trying to fix something, or trying to remember something, or recall something that happened in the past, and asking ourselves, why did that happen? Or and sometimes it's a switch off between the two. We think of something that happened a little while ago. Oh, I don't want to forget that, so we're making a checklist for the future so that we can take care of it in the future. But ideally, that sweet spot, if the past and the future are the two sides of an Oreo cookie, we want to be in the white, creamy part. That would be the presence, the stillness in between that. And in that, we get a real opportunity to see what we are all about as humans, as meditators. That we are in this presence. We are not allowing the mind to have its way in the area of being concerned about fixing something in the future, or to think about the blame or whatever we might have in the past. Just realizing that that's a play of the mind. It's all created by the mind. In that respect, the past and the future don't even exist. The only thing that truly exists is this stuff right now, this moment. It seems like the future exists, and we can almost feel it, but it is just a play of the mind. So we're sitting in this present moment, and if we don't give ourselves a chance to recognize that, it will just completely slip away. After a while, we realize that we spent very, very little time in the present moment, which is really who we are. People call it such things as the Buddha nature. I call it our true nature a lot. Satori is another name, and it goes on and on. Sometimes you just hear people like, "Oh, I was so Zen-like," and that's that presence, that present moment. And very difficult, for us to be able to close the eyes and just come into that place and like, "Oh, I found it," and I'm going to rest right there because this feels so good. No problems, no worries. No desires, and no fatigue. And, to be able to go in that and to stay there is almost impossible, especially if we're new to meditation. We can get a taste of that, a feel for that presence, and then the mind will go, "Hey, come over here, come in, play with me. Let's figure out something to fix or something like that." That's the reason I say fix is because that's my mind. I'm very aware that when I go into meditation, my mind will want to fix something, whether it's somebody or something or some place or whatever it might be, some situation or whatever. And if I can let go of that fixing, I can find myself in that presence. And I can rest in that. So that's from my personal experience. And we all have our own thing. A lot of us might have something from the past that is bothering us, has been bothering us so bad, so we habitually, by habit, the mind goes into the past. Boom. And as soon as we become quiet, the mind wants to go into the past. And as I said, some people want to go into the future. But if we can catch that and understand it and be aware of it and know that we can come into this presence and just kind of hang out there as much as we can get better and better and better at it. And if we can do it in our meditation practice, then we can do it more in our everyday life. And we can use that as a wonderful tool. That's why meditation is a wonderful reliever of stress. And if we can relieve stress, then we're relieving all these physical ailments that are related to stress, which is almost all of them. Even the common cold has been linked to stress. Everything from cardiovascular problems to digestive problems to and cognitive problems, all related to stress. And so meditation takes the edge off of that, and it kind of shows us, we kind of get the joke. We kind of get the joke that we've been struggling a long time, for most of us, without really needing to have to do that. That everything is fine in this moment. If we decide that it's fine in this moment, it is. And one teacher told me, he said that you'll never get to a place where you'll be absolutely free. He said because you're already there, but we don't realize it. And meditation can point that out to us. And so it's a very wonderful practice in that respect. And so, kind of full circle, meditation is not a time to be thinking. It's not even a time for, like I said last week, it's not a time for self-psychotherapy. We don't want to be trying to figure out our problems or anybody else's problems while we're meditating. The main thing that we want to do is be aware. And that awareness is enough to cure so many ailments, so many problems, so many difficulties. So we will meditate here, and then we'll see if there's any questions and maybe a little discussion at about 8 o'clock, and then at 8:30 we'll be done. And Bhante Ananda said he might stop by tonight at 8:30. It'd be interesting, huh? So if you're newer or new to meditation, I'll do some guiding in the meditation itself, which will kind of give you an idea of what to do as far as what to focus on and how to focus. And the main thing prior to that is the posture meditation, and that's why we try to provide all these different cushions and everything. It's usually a nice idea to get, ideally, if we can actually get the seat above the knees. It's not always possible, but then it's much more like sitting in a chair when we're actually on a cushion. So if we get the hips higher than the knees, it can become very, very, very comfortable for us. And I remember the first time I sat it was in a yoga studio in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and or was it in Green Bay? Yeah, it was early. Yeah, in the early, I don't know, late '80s or something like that. And I was interested in yoga, and when you go into a yoga studio, it was a great big yoga seminar kind of thing. Nobody was actually practicing it, they were just talking about it. And the room was full and there was no chairs. It was a yoga studio, so everybody sat on the floor. And I thought, well, I'll sit on the floor, this will be easy. And I sat on the floor just like this, flat on the floor, no cushion or anything. And it was excruciating. I couldn't believe it. I felt like my back was on fire because the muscles, weren't used to sitting like that. And I struggled with sitting. I didn't really understand the concept of a cushion, to get a little bit higher. And then somebody simply pointed out that they said you might want to sit a little bit higher up, get a little higher cushion. And I did, and it was like, voila, made all the difference in the world. And so I say that because it's if we're not used to sitting on the floor, and we can always sit in a chair. There's absolutely no problem with that. But if we're not used to sitting on the floor, it can be kind of a strain in certain areas. And if our lower back is straining, that generally means that we're not sitting high enough. You might want to try that. There's more cushions laying around and stuff, I think. Daniel has one hiding back here, but I think everybody's okay. If you need anything, the point is, if you need anything, grab something to be more comfortable. Because we're going to be sitting here for about 35 minutes. And that's a short meditation for some people and might be a little bit long for others. So posture, and then we will, then we have to worry about the mind. And I'll talk a little bit about what we can focus on. Usually people use the breath here for the meditation object, and so that I'll be referring to the breath quite a bit. Okay, so please make yourself comfortable. Please bring your attention to the body. Notice how the body feels. Many times the first thing we do notice is the body, whether it's the aspect of breathing or maybe how the body feels comfortable or uncomfortable. And interestingly, when our meditation is going well, the body is usually the first thing that falls away, that we lose contact with. But the body can tell us a lot of things. In our everyday living, we can feel fear and anger within the body. If there's something unpleasant that we have to do, we can also often feel it in the body. If we're experiencing a lot of stress, we can feel that in the body. And of course, the body can bring us a great deal of pleasure as well. And even in meditation, sometimes it feels like this is exactly what the body needed, just to relax a little bit. Have the eyes closed, the body relaxed. And again, sometimes in meditation, we feel discomfort within the body. Like it's some type of yoga practice or something that sometimes we wonder if we're doing it correctly. And one part of the body that is used probably more than anything else as far as meditation goes is the breath. Bring your attention to the breath at this moment and notice where you feel it. And when I say bring your attention to the breath, where does your attention arrive at? Where do you feel the breath? And wherever you feel the breath, this is likely what we could call our sweet spot, because it's a very valuable tool for us. To bring our attention to that point where the breath and the other aspect of the body, whatever it might be, come into contact. So as far as coming into presence, we need an object to focus on. And it's almost an artificial way to bring us into this presence of mind. It's like we're almost attempting to stop the thoughts. Although in meditation we're not really trying to do anything. But our intention is to come into this presence so we find something to very subtly focus on. And we can focus on the breath, where we feel the breath touching another aspect of the body, maybe the tip of the nose. The throat or the sinuses, the windpipe. Sometimes just the overall temperature of the breath, or maybe even the dryness or the moisture of the breath. All these different things that we can notice. We want to find some aspect of the breath that we can be very keen to rest our attention on. For many people, it is someplace around the tip of the nose, the nostrils. So the breath can point out many things for us. The breath can be short, it can be long, it can be shallow, it can be deep. It can be moist or dry or hot or cold. Constantly changing, one breath after another, one breath different than the next. Really without our interference, without us even thinking about it. The breath goes on, constantly changing, doing what it has to do. So when we focus on it, when we concentrate on the breath, we're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to improve upon anything. It's perfect just the way it is. We're just noticing. We're being aware. And so that awareness is very, very key. That awareness or that consciousness. And in this case, it's very light. We're not trying to apply a great amount of concentration, but more like a soft awareness, as mentioned. We're noticing. And so we can also notice a thought when it comes up in our meditation, or a feeling within the body. If we feel something within the body while we're meditating, we can really do ourselves a favor by just noticing whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, and then coming back to the breath. So it's really just a shifting of awareness. That noticing. come back to the breath, and we notice that the mind might wish to think about something that recently happened, or it might wish to go into the other direction of planning something that might be going on this evening. And so we are aware of that, but our intention is to stay with the breath, so we shift our awareness back to the breath. And then after a while, this becomes very automatic. We don't have to train or condition our awareness to do this. We set the intention for the awareness to come back to the breath. And it is a conditioning, but it's a positive conditioning, rather than allowing the mind to stay in the past or the future. And so it's a very functional part of the mind when we set the intention to come back to the breath again and again, and it does it by habit more than anything else, rather than the habit of wandering, the mind wandering in the past or the future. And then seemingly, there's nobody behind any of this. And we can just simply be the awareness that is aware of the awareness coming back and forth from the wandering mind to the breath itself, which is presence, stillness. And that's when we begin to realize that our meditation is really working well for us, that it starts paying dividends in the area of rest and energy. And it can actually provide a great deal of clarity of mind as well. And so it's not hard to bring our attention to the breath, but it's hard to train the mind to accept that and to make it easy and allow it to be just an awareness that keeps coming back to it almost automatically, and sometimes very automatically. It starts just by knowing and getting to know the breath very well, finding that sweet spot, becoming familiar with it, and trusting it. Having a faith that this is a beneficial practice. And we can do that by setting our intention to do the practice on a daily basis. And then in doing so, we realize that our days are much more mindful. We become much more aware, much more present in every activity throughout the day. And a lot of it is trusting and giving up the idea of control in the fact that we can just condition the mind to be free by allowing it to come back to the breath Just keep coming back. Thank you. I can get it. Can't see.
No.
That's okay. We can get it. I need a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Does everybody have one of these? Need one?
Yeah, short on these.
There's some in the other room, but
I think I know it by heart.
maybe we can share. We might be a little bit short. We'll get some more of these out here next week. Sorry about that. So we're just going to recite this together. This is the Loving Kindness Sutra. This is something that we've been doing for a long time. Loving kindness is also called metta. A lot of it know it by that name. And this is a sutra that probably the most popular sutra that the monks chant in the Theravada tradition. So we won't do the Pali, we'll do the English.
I can do it.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, maybe next time. To attain the state of peace, one skilled in goodness should be able, upright, perfectly upright, gentle in speech, kind, and free from pride, contented, easily satisfied, with limited duties and unburdened livelihood, controlled in senses, discreet, reserved, and not blindly attached to groups. One should not commit the slightest wrong, that the wise might censure, wishing, may there be happiness and security, may all beings be happy. Whatever beings there are, whether feeble or strong, tall or short, large, medium, or small, microscopic or mammoth, leaving none. Seen or unseen, living near or far away, born or to be born, may all beings be happy. Let one not deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither in anger nor in ill will should one wish another harm. Just as a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so, one should cultivate a limitless concern for all living beings. Extend loving kindness throughout the world without limitation, above, below, and across, free of obstruction, enmity, or hostility. Whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, one should diligently sustain this mindfulness. This is called sublime living. Without holding narrow views, but being endowed with broad vision and avoiding attachment to sense desire, the virtuous are not born again into this world. May each one of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. And may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, courage, and understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your meditation time with everyone else.
Well, that was the longest I ever meditated.
That's a long one for you, huh?
For me, yeah.
It's funny. It could be a long one for some people and a short one for others. But it's if it's long here, then it's going to be really long at home. You know, because there's more. It's easier to. Our intention is to come here and sit and meditate, and there's a lot of people around us. There's that energy, kind of, you know.
A lot of distraction.
And was there up here, or?
Well, I think in your own room, in your own chill zone, it's just time goes where it goes. But for me, to be still for 10 minutes is pretty challenging.
Yeah. Oh, you mean there's more distractions at home?
No,
Or
here.
oh, here. Okay. Okay.
But it was really quiet, so that was different.
Yeah. Yeah. See, at home, a person has tendency to, you know, to check the dog, or I don't know, you know, the phone rings, or, you know, something happens, and you know, we got it made. We got a pretty quiet home and everything. No dog, a couple of cats, and they're not noisy, but I don't know. Most people find it a lot easier to come into a room like this. It's kind of like when I was practicing a lot of yoga, I could never get a home practice going because I don't know, but I could walk into a yoga studio and no problem because my mind said, this is it. I mean, I came here for one reason, that one purpose, to do yoga. So, and I think it's like that when a lot of people mention that when they work out, you know, when they go to LA Fitness or whatever, you know, and they have trouble working out at home, but when they get in the car and make that, and you know, take that journey to the, you know, to the gym and start working out, it's a little bit easier. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, one of the reasons why I encourage people to kind of do this kind of thing, you know, at least once a week. Some people do it. I've known some people that don't meditate at all outside of groups like this. You know, they'll go up on go to a meetup group or something, and where's it at tonight? Or they have their groups, you know, that they go to each night.
This was nice because it was a forced meditation. You couldn't leave.
It's forced, yeah. Yeah. Well, you could bolt.
That was good.
You can bolt, you know. Yeah, that's why we have Joe, the doorman, over there. You know. Get back there. Meditation or outside of meditation. Actually, I wanted to touch on that a little bit. When I first started talking, I talked about, you know, what the Buddha referred to as suffering, and of course that's the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha's first sermon, if you will, in Deer Park, after he became enlightened, he gave the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, which was basically we suffer, and we suffer because of our desires. And he said there's a way out of this suffering, and that is the path. And the path is, in most people would look at it as the Eightfold Path, and which means different understandings, different ways of thinking, different ways of talking, and different actions. Look at our livelihood, you know, how we make our living. Effort, you know, how we apply ourselves towards our practice, and then of course concentration and mindfulness. That is the Eightfold Path in a nutshell. I mean, it can be a lifelong study, but it's Eightfold Path is basically how we make our way throughout the world and understand this idea of suffering and how to get beyond it, how to live our lives with with less of it or without it completely. And there's different levels of that the Buddha mentioned too. But the first understanding is that this suffering, what he called suffering, and this desire, it's not that anything's going to change necessarily, but it's our attitude towards it. And that's why meditation, helps us to see that. I really believe it does. From my personal experience, it works. And so we're not trying to necessarily stop, I mentioned the past and the future quite a bit when I was talking, and I talk about it quite often, because it's just that we should be aware of where the thoughts are going, whether they're past orientated or future orientated. And if we can understand that, we understand what is happening with the mind to a large extent. But we're not really trying to necessarily stop any of that. We're trying to give ourselves a little tip on that there's a suffering that's going to happen. If we can kind of understand it and be aware of it, it has a much less impact on us. And if we try to change things, and if we struggle to stop, the thoughts and try to be in this presence all the time, we're going against what we should be doing, which is letting a lot of this go and renouncing it and resolving it through understanding and through acceptance more than anything else. If something happens to us and we fight it, with all of our might, and we try to prevent it from happening, there's a struggle there, But if we accept it, there's no struggle at all. And that doesn't mean that we're trying to take the coward's way out or anything, or blind acceptance, but it's through awareness. It's through our understanding of what are we actually trying to fight? What are we trying to uphold? What are our beliefs? And particularly, who are we blaming? For our difficulties. If we can notice our complaining, that's the number one thing. If we hear ourselves complain that this should be this way, or that should be that way, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing that, that is a tip-off right there that we're creating our own suffering. Our insistence that things should be a particular way is very agonizing for us. And we can, if we are aware of that, we can prove that to ourselves almost on a daily basis. So where does our suffering come from? What is causing any kind of uneasiness for us? What causes stress in our life? And if we ask ourselves that and really look for the answers, it's different for everybody to a certain extent, but we'll find that it is through just being uneasy with things that we don't have to be necessarily uneasy about. What are we accepting? What are we not accepting? And what are we complaining about? But meditation, like I think I mentioned a little while ago, it allows us to become sensitive to all this. And we can feel it. Many people feel it in the body, more than in the mind. And the body can tell us a lot. I mentioned that in the guiding of the meditation. When we're fearful, we feel it in the body. When we're angry, we can feel it coming up in the body. When we're driving, we get cut off, and it could be kind of a mixture of fear and anger, and we can, almost like a trembling that we kind of goes through the system, and it's a tip off right there. And you know, for a lot of people, they notice right away to combat that, they take a deep breath, and because we kind of forget to breathe when there's stress and things like that, we start breathing, we feel good already, we feel normal already, as whatever normal is for us, you know. But so in a way, it's bringing our attention to the breath, and also it's allowing ourselves, you know, to actually bring that attention to something other than, you know, what is causing our difficulties. So probably one of the most common things that we get upset about is what other people are doing, you know. So relationships is very, very tough for us as humans. You know, we are relational beings for the most part, and we can find it, you know, very easy to put the fault on other people, and you know, for our difficulties, for the way we feel, pointing fingers. And I don't know, you've probably heard this, but when you point one finger at somebody, you have 3 of them pointing at you, you know, like this kind of thing. They're coming back at you. So we have to be very careful of that. And that's a part of the complaining, you know, the fault and the blame, and basically, you know, blaming other people for our misery. So it's something we should all take a look at. And what it comes down to is more love, you know, from our part, and understanding, you know, from other people's, you know, from where they're coming from. People react from their own pain, and this is something I hear from Terry a lot. She pointed that out, where people, she constantly tells people that so and so is reacting from their pain, and that you should take a look at that and understand it, and so if somebody's doing something that we feel like they shouldn't be doing, if we look at why they're doing it, there's many, many conditions that are put together in order for them to be doing that one specific action, and it happens to be in your space, happens to be pointed at you. And if we kind of tear it down and see where that's coming from, we realize that it's not from that one specific individual that is causing a problem for this individual. It's just a combination of many, many factors.
Usually has nothing to do with us either. What someone is doing that
Right.
we perceive as being done to us is really not being done to us. It's their own pain.
Their own pain.
Speaking, and then we're interpreting it in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So there's many different ways that we can look at our suffering, and for the most part, I see it as, you know, as stress. And from a personal standpoint, I think the most growth that I ever had was when I had a lot of stress and misunderstanding of the world and how people were reacting, and went into meditation kind of as an escape, but to realize that it was a wonderful tool for me to discover more about myself, you know, and to go into that stillness and that presence, and realize that everything is fine just the way it is. You come out of that meditation and you start thinking about that problem you're having, and you can, and it's pointing to us right there that it's the mind gravitating towards that problem, that situation. If we come out of our meditation and say everything is fine, and the mind doesn't do that, we first of all, we probably been meditating for a while, or we might be in a very good space, you know. That's one of the reasons that people go on vacations. to get that change of scenery. And they come back home, and they start picking up, the mind starts picking up on these habitual problems that they were looking at for all these day after day after day, and they kind of crawl back into the situation again. I mean, if it's a good, successful vacation, if you know what I mean. We go on vacation to ease the mind to a certain extent, to get out of our normal patterns, and that normalcy is the normal pattern of the mind. I mean, we're still taking the body with us. If we have difficulties with the body, that's still going to be there, but all of the other factors are not there. And we come back from the vacation, we start going to the normal job or the normal situations, and the plasticity of the brain all of a sudden takes up those grooves again, and we get back into the stress, if you call it. If it's a stressful life that you're coming back to, it'll become stressful again. And meditation is the same way. We're taking little mini vacations. Not that we're purposely trying to change anything or purposely, taking a vacation. It's just that we are giving those gaps in the mind between these the thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, and easing that stress. Just pointing to ourselves that it is all created by the mind. Everybody in agreement with that, I hope? Yeah.
It's all in our heads.
It's all in the head, yeah. And if we realize that, I mean, that awareness is key. And we can go, yep, it's all in our head. It's all. We're creating it ourselves, but then we forget. I mean, as soon as we walk out that door and somebody walks up and slaps you, it's like, what's this? And we just get thrown right into it again.
Does that happen often?
Yeah, usually right out this door.
Only
Yeah.
if you try to leave early.
Exactly. I heard Big Joe's gonna kick my butt,
No. But when we point to a lot of these things, we realize that there's hardly anybody behind any of it, and that it's just happening by all these conditions that are coming together. If we are happy beings and we're living life well, there's very little complaining and a great deal of acceptance and a lot of letting go, a lot of renunciation of things probably that used to bother us in the future, realizing that they're just not that important anymore.
What is the point of it all?
It's programming. We're conditioned that way. It usually starts about like temper tantrums. When a tantrum happens, it usually happens around age 4, and that's when our personal view starts blossoming. We have tantrums because things aren't going our way, and we put up this resistance, and we can carry that through our lives. It eases, and it gets. I mean, we don't usually have tantrums, as adults, but some of us do, and it's this resistance, automatic, habitual, and if that's the way we're supposed to live our lives, I mean, that's what we should do. But for most people, we see the falseness of it. It's kind of slow going for many of us. But and then the habit of like a tantrum. If a child has a habit of having tantrums, the habit eventually breaks up and stops. And it's that way for everything, really. But it's the coming of age, when we are around 2 or 3, we're usually, for most of us, if we're, if we're wired properly and everything, everything is a pretty good life for us. And then we start realizing we have this personal identity view that is misconstrued. I mean, it's altered somewhat, usually by just conditioning of everybody around us, our parents, and everybody creating this individual, and then the oneness is gone. And our job is to come back into that oneness and realize that that there's really very little control that we have in situations that we feel like we want a lot of control. And that's where the acceptance has to come in. A lot of us are just completely blown away when we don't get something. Because we're so used to having it our way. Do you remember the first time you wanted some relationship in your life with that particular person, and it was not going to happen? You know, usually that first breakup when we were teenagers or something, how traumatic that was for us. It's like, no, this can't happen. And but if there was acceptance in that moment, then there wouldn't have been any problem with it. Different varying degrees for everybody, you know, in that area. Got a few moments left, a few minutes, I should say. Any questions from anybody, or anything that you want to share, or anything at all? Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about what we have coming up. Okay, well, a couple of things that we have coming up here. We have some retreats. We have a one-day retreat on Sunday, August 11th. Those are from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. Delicious lunch is included. It's only $20, you know, so the money is not a factor or anything, but we usually allow about 20 people in this room. And we do walking meditation, sitting meditation, and there's a few teachings and things like that.
When is that this week?
Who said that?
August 11th.
Oh,
Week from Sunday.
yeah,
From Sunday.
week from Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this Sunday is the 4th, and so it's on the 11th. Yeah. Yeah, and you must register for that, because otherwise it causes a problem with the food thing. And that's Terry's area.
Don't make
She-
me mad.
Don't make her
Don't
mad.
make me mad.
Beanie knees otherwise.
Weren't we just talking about that? No.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And then the other, we have another retreat, a 4-day retreat coming up for Labor Day weekend. I think this is maybe the 5th year we've been doing this. We do 3 longer retreats, 4-day retreats each year, and Labor Day is one of them. And that's up in Payson at the Merit Center. A lot of you have been to those. And that's August 30th, I think, to September 2nd or 3rd, something like that. So Labor Day weekend, most people have Mondays off, and that's why we have it over that weekend. Extended weekend retreat. And it's, very nice, it's cooler up there, usually a lot of elk and nature, and it's a beautiful place.
Where do
And,
you stay up there?
pardon me?
Where do you stay up there?
It's at the Merit Center.
Merritt?
Yeah. That is a residential, or in other words, everybody stays right there. Yeah. And if you want any information about any of this, just go to the meditationlearningcenter.com. September, I think it's for the 14th, at our sister center, I guess you could say, at the Buddhist temple off of Broadway here. We're starting a 8-week course. That's going to be the course is titled Mindfulness in Plain English, and we're going to be using Bhante Gunaratana's book, Mindfulness in Plain English. And so I know a lot of people have that book because it's like it's really a wonderful book. And if you don't have it, you should have it. And if you don't have it, they'll be provided for at the temple for $10. I was just talking to the.
Is a book about what, by who?
It's from Bhante Gunaratana, and it's the book on mindfulness and mindfulness practice. Yeah.
Is that before or beyond mindfulness, or?
No, that's his first. That's his
Oh, that's
first
the first
book.
one.
His first popular book. It's about 33 years old now. Book, yeah.
Almost as old as I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Right.
amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's older than me.
Yeah. But if anybody, if you know Bhante Gunaratana and his books, that he's just a wonderful writer. And I'm trying to think. There's some other things. There's a few flyers by the door there. You can check those out and take those with you if you like. And that's.
CRM? No?
Pardon me?
Grief recovery? No?
I don't think we're going to need. We have. We're doing grief recovery work, and if you're interested in that, please ask. We're doing a pilot group, but I think that's pretty much filled. And then the grief recovery is through Grief Recovery Institute, and it's a 8-week programs for people that have had any kind of loss in their life. Chris knows a lot about it
Which
too,
is
right
everybody,
there.
yeah.
Our buddy Chris. But it's a grief recovery program. If you're interested in that, if you think something you want to take a look at, by all means, let us know.
But you said that's full?
Pardon me?
You said that was full?
Yeah. If it's not full, it almost is. We're doing a pilot group that the Institute asked us to do, and then we're going to have ongoing 8-week programs in that. So there's always a chance to get in on that. Always a chance. If you want some information, just ask. We can talk after this if you like. Yeah. Anything else from anybody? Chris?
Just a quick one. At age 3, when we're accepting things and maybe don't have stuff like that, and then comes age 4 and the temper tantrums. I want this, and then no, you can't have it. Soften and all that.
Yeah.
Is there is that, first off, I guess, is that necessary? And then secondly, if it's not necessary, why do we raise our children in a way that creates it? So is it avoidable?
Not
Is there a
really.
way to raise a selfless child?
Yeah, it's, I think in some,
How's it working out for you?
in some areas of the world, they have very little of that, tantrums like that. And it's not that it's an American thing or anything like that, but it's something in the upbringing, definitely in the upbringing. But it has to do with the personality view, and a child, reaching for the bottle, and then we get it for them, and on and on and on and on for everything. We're there for every beck and need that they want. But in other parts of the world, it's not like that. The children, when they want something, they just let the child go and try to find a way to get it. They're just raising them different than we would. But we raise children how we were raised, basically. That's why I don't have any children.
It's just largely about our consciousness too. When we're mostly don't have high consciousness levels, and then we're bringing another being onto this earth, and we're, as Shane said, teaching us with all the same patterns that our parents taught us. When you do wake up, become more conscious, you stand a better chance of raising children who would not act in those ways, because we teach them by example and by who we are, kind of through osmosis more than anything else.
Coming from a mother of 2 boys, so she's a better. She has more perspective on that than I do. That's for sure.
So your boys are with your tantrums?
Oh, God, yes. I wasn't highly conscious when I was 30 years old, though. It took a few years.
Okay.
It's not-
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
We give the children a screen to look at.
We can't-
Say that again, John?
You give them a screen to look at it. You give them YouTube or something.
Text on these.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah. That's the new babysitter.
I missed your